In this video, I want to talk with you about Passover, how we observe it, and why. So we're going to read through some scripture and talk about why it is that we observe these practices and the way that we observe them, because it's not enough just to check off a box. God wants our hearts, and our hearts need to be rent to what is His heart, what is it that He has established, and why. Another way of thinking about this is we're supposed to become holy as God is holy. How can we become holy as God is holy if we don't care about the heart, the why of why He has commanded certain things? We have to care about that why, and not just to know it intellectually, but to know it in our hearts, and to bring our hearts into loving what He loves, wanting what He wants, and separating from what He hates. There are a lot of videos on this channel on Passover. The one thing that I want to say to you about looking at listening to the various videos on this channel is that God has continued to bring me into understanding as time has gone on. We started out observing in a particular way, and then He's continued to give more and more understanding. The earlier videos are not going to be bad for you. The later videos, the more recent videos, are going to give you a deeper depth of understanding. We're going to start out with reading the very first time that God ever mentioned Passover, the very first time that He ever commanded this to Moses on behalf of the Israelites. And this is found in Exodus 12. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in Egypt, "This month is to be for you the first month of your year." Now, why does this matter? Because God made a promise to Abraham that he was going to have descendants that are as numerous as the stars in the sky, that his people, his descendants, were going to be in captivity for 400 years, and actually they were in captivity for 430 years. So remember that, when God is using numbers, it's not always an exact. It many times is a roundabout. So his descendants were in captivity for 400 years. Then we learn later that the descendants of Abraham, of course, are not all descended literally by blood, but that his children, the children of Abraham, come in through the covenant of circumcision, and that if you are a child of Abraham, you'll do what Abraham did, just as Jesus said to a group of Jews who He acknowledged in the book of John were descended from Abraham, but He said if you were really His kids, you'd do what He did. If you were really His children, you would do what Abraham did. And He said, you are children of the devil because your desire is to do what the devil wants to do. So we understand that though God has established descent and ancestry, He has established it in order for us to understand spiritual things, and that we don't determine these things based on superficial, carnal definitions. So ethnicity, your 23andMe, are not going to be the basis by which you are justified. You've already been told how you're going to be justified. How, people of God? How are you going to be justified? By your heart. So why is Passover significant? Why is Moses significant? Why does it matter that God did things? Because everything is continuous. And if people were saying, oh, well, God already fulfilled that, or God already did that, or God already told Abraham that, they wouldn't understand the fulfillment, the continuation of His promises, and what it is that He's doing, and what it means to us now. We don't understand that continuity if we're just acting like God doesn't want us to remember. If you do something nice for someone, do you want them to forget about it? I mean, it's part of the basis of forming a relationship with someone, isn't it? So do you want them to be like, yeah, but you didn't do something nice for me today, so therefore you've never done anything nice for me and we don't have a relationship? I mean, it's just really silly. I'm using a silly example. God wants you to remember this is the very wording that He uses in His holy days, is that you are to remember this from generation to generation as a lasting ordinance wherever you live. You're to teach it to your children. Can He be any more clear about that? That we have somehow started to say, or not started to say, but have been saying actually for years, oh no, that's already been fulfilled and that was just for the Jews. That's stupid. Those are not children of God. You can't be a child of God if that's what you believe. So the reason this matters is because this is a promise that God is fulfilling to Abraham. It is part of a name that he's making for himself. Oh no, his name is Yehoshua. His name is Yahweh. No. His name was stated as Hayah, the verb of what he's doing. So we're supposed to be rending our heart to what God has been doing. He was, he is to come. This is beginning a name, which he references later on and says, you saw how I carried you on eagle's wings. You saw how I made a name for myself in what I did to Pharaoh. This is what I require. And that's exactly how he extends the covenant to us. That was my experience, so I expect that it will be yours. You know now who I am. I have proven myself to you. What's it going to be? I require this of you. I require you to let go of this and that, your career, your house, your building. I require all of this, but I've proven myself to you. I've been making my name. I've been revealing my name. That's why this matters. At least that's why it should matter at this point. But there are so many more reasons why this should matter. Namely, I have been telling you that we are entering into a Passover tomorrow night. I don't care what it says online, because the word says that those people calling themselves Jews have lost God's calendar. That's what it says in Hosea 2:11, and that's what it says in Lamentations 2:6. So I don't care what Google says. I don't care what people calling themselves chosen who don't have any regard for God's law and what he has established. I don't care what they have to say. Those who've prostituted themselves to the Gregorian calendar. Nope, don't care. And I'm not going to care anytime soon. I know the calendar God has revealed to me. He has testified to it. Tomorrow night, we are entering into a Passover that is a critical Passover. If you have not returned to God, if you have not cleaned yourself up to enter into Passover, you're not going up in the first resurrection. So, if you're observing this, if you're continually observing this, then that means that you are going to understand when he's fulfilling something new. Now, I just want to say something right away, because this is something that I thought when I was observing Passover in the beginning. We would eat lamb on the first night, but we're not doing sacrifices anymore. He has said that we're supposed to eat the unleavened bread, but he has not said that we need to continue eating lamb. So that's not a part of the practice, but I'll tell you what, among those who are, and I'm not saying everyone who has eaten lamb, obviously I'm telling you that I ate lamb on the first night because I was trying to rend my heart, but there are many people who are very superficial who will eat lamb as a box to be checked, and it's not even a requirement anymore. As you are observing, and if you're really rending your heart to God, he's going to continue to bring you deeper and deeper into understanding of his holy days, what you are to observe. So I don't want you to be upset if you get some things wrong. As long as you are rending your heart to God, he has a way of bringing you in. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in Egypt, month is to be for you the first month of your year. So he's establishing his calendar for the first time. Tell the whole community of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, each man is to take a lamb for his family, one for each household. If any household is too small for a whole lamb, they must share one with their nearest neighbor, having taken into account the number of people there are. You are to determine the amount of lamb needed in accordance with what each person will eat. The animals you choose must be year-old males without defect, and you may take them from the sheep or the goats. Take care of them until the 14th day of the month, when all the members of the community of Israel must slaughter them at twilight. Okay, for those of you who are new to to understanding sacrifice and slaughter, it sounds terrible, doesn't it? It sounds terrible because we have slaughter practices that are terrible in the world. They're disgusting. These slaughter practices were not ruthless. Animals did not go into a slaughterhouse and then just sit around waiting for the blood to be drained, while the blood actually went back and resorbed into the body so that you can't fully drain the blood. Our command with God, or God has commanded us to not eat the blood of strangled animals, to not eat the meat of strangled animals, and to not eat the blood in the animal, which means that that animal needs to be slaughtered and then the blood needs to be drained immediately. And the animal was to be slaughtered a particular way. They didn't have slaughterhouses. And the animal is to be treated a certain way in its lifetime. So you need to know that, because you shouldn't be going to the regular grocery store and buying your meat. And anyone who has half a heart would understand that it is not right that we should be partaking in eating animals who have been mistreated, fed defiled food. If you want Jesus to care for you as one of his sheep, you better care for his animals well. This is not the way that God established us to treat animals. So when it's saying slaughter, it's just saying to kill the animal. But it's not saying to brutally hurt the animal and treat it brutally in its lifetime, stuffed into a cage and, all these other things, fed disgusting food, rape. This is not okay. And these are the things that are happening with the animals that we've been buying in the grocery store. So you need not be upset about what God established. You need to be upset about what man is doing today. Take care of them until the 14th day of the month, when all the members of the community of Israel must slaughter them at twilight. They are to take some of the blood and put it on the sides and tops of the door frames of the houses where they eat the lambs. That same night they are to eat the meat roasted over the fire along with bitter herbs and bread made without yeast. So already on that first night, they're eating bread made without yeast. I just want to point that out to you because we do have 7 days of unleavened bread, of which this is not a part. Now, the 7 days of unleavened bread are referred to as the Passover. They are part of the Passover. The first night of Passover is not part of unleavened bread. Okay, so I'm going to say it again. The first night of Passover plus the 7 days of unleavened bread, that is the entire Passover. The first night of Passover is not part of the 7 days of unleavened bread. So if you are understanding this correctly and you are observing it, you would understand that you actually eat unleavened bread for 8 days, for the 7 days of unleavened bread plus the first night of the Passover. Now also, if you understand this, then you would understand that the day after the Passover, in the book of Joshua, when the Israelites entered the land, you wouldn't be thinking that that's just the next day after Easter Sunday. Or you wouldn't be thinking that that's the next day after the 14th, especially since it says the day after the Sabbath. But the 15th of the month, the first day of unleavened bread, is a Sabbath. So it can't be referring to that. It has to be referring to the entire Passover, the full 8 days of Passover, so that the first day of the offering of first fruits, when the Israelites entered the land that God was going to give them, as is stated in Leviticus 23, they observed the offering of first fruits. After those 8 days of Passover, they observed it the day after. So what would that have been? That would have been the 22nd of that month of Nisan. Okay, so obedience matters, doesn't it? Otherwise, these wolves come in and they start restructuring doctrine because we're not obeying. So even though I'm teaching this to you, it's extremely important that you're obeying, that you're, sitting and trying to understand how are we arriving at these days? What does this actually mean? And that you're not just being spoon-fed by me. That's the reason I'm taking you through Scripture, so that you can know from Scripture that this is what it says. Do not eat the meat raw or boiled in water, but roasted over a fire with the heads and head, legs, and internal organs. Do not leave any of it till morning. If some is left till morning, you must burn it. This is how you are to eat it, with your cloak tucked into your belt, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. Eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. Now listen, why do you think you're eating it in haste? First of all, you're eating it in haste because they were driven out of Egypt. Pharaoh was telling them, leave, 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 okay? So they didn't go out. The part of the command is that they can't go out that night. So they didn't go out that night. They went out the next day. They gathered all their stuff. They plundered the Egyptians, and then they left. We also are going to be eating this in haste right now. You better enter in. If you don't enter in, you're not going to be there, period. And then there's going to be another fulfillment of Passover, in which God is, when the seventh trumpet is about to sound, what does the seventh trumpet represent? It represents the destruction of the wicked. And so when the seventh trumpet is about to sound, that's when the mystery of God is going to be accomplished, the resurrection. So if the seventh trumpet is about to sound and God's about to bring destruction, will you be leaving in haste? Well, yeah. So all of those who are saying Passover doesn't matter, oh no, we do Easter Sunday, all those who are saying, no, that was for the Jews, That's how they're... It's stupidity. Why? And it makes God out to be stupid, really. Like they're basically saying like God has just wasted his time with all of this. No, this is for us. This is for us. If you're a Christian, you're a Jew. If you're a Jew, you're a Christian. Period. Jews were promised a Messiah. If they rejected that Messiah, it's because they had been hardened, as is stated in Isaiah, as was stated by Jesus, referenced by Jesus, and you're not supposed to be getting your gospel from them. The definition of a Jew is one who is circumcised in heart. If you're circumcised in heart, you wouldn't have been hardened. If you're not, then you were hardened. You were not able to accept the Messiah. You're not a Jew. The first Jews were Christian, and they weren't doing this ridiculous thing that you guys do, that many of you do, calling yourself messianic something or other. Like, what do you mean messianic something? Why do you need to distinguish yourself? Early Christians didn't need to do that, and they were Jews. They were Jews by race. It just doesn't make sense that y'all are doing that. It doesn't make sense that you need to delineate yourselves as being some certain kind of Christian. Oh no, I'm a Lutheran. No, I'm a Wesleyan. No, I'm a Catholic. What does that mean? I follow Paul, I follow Apollos? Don't you recognize that Paul addressed that in the Word? That they weren't crucified for you? That they planted the seed? He planted the seed, Apollos watered it. God's been making it grow? What name do you want on your forehead, guys? Don't talk to me about your messianic rabbi and such foolishness. It's foolishness. It makes me sick. You have no regard for the Word if that's what you're saying. God has already told you, Christ has already told you that he's your rabbi, that he's your teacher, and in doing that, you call someone else messianic rabbi? Then let me tell you something. You have favored a delusion. You have favored falsehood over the truth, and you have rejected the Son of God. You are Antichrist. Don't talk to me. So they're leaving in haste. The reason I'm taking these pauses is to help you understand the fulfillment, to help you understand why it is that God has established this, so that you can understand the times you're living in right now and the times you're about to go into. On that same night I will pass through Egypt and strike down every firstborn of both people and animals, and I will bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. Now, doesn't have to happen this way. God can do things however he wants. But if you're rending your heart to this, then you might look alive tomorrow night. You might look alive tomorrow night when God, during the first Passover, brought a destroying angel. And those who had the blood over their doorway were spared. And those who did not, the firstborn of every firstborn in their house, every firstborn in their livestock died. You might look alive if you have been living this out, and if you're looking forward to what God has already said he's going to do, that he's going to bring a plague on all those who do not have the seal, who do not have the blood over their doorway. He's going to bring a plague on them. This is Passover. Hello? If you've been observing it, if you've been in obedience, then you would recognize that. And that's exactly what he says he's going to do when the fifth trumpet is blown. So if you haven't been discerning the things that I'm saying, and you haven't been discerning the times that you're living in and what you're seeing, well, as it says in Daniel, the wise are going to understand, but the wicked are not. What part of that do you belong to? It's not because I haven't said in every single video in the last 4 years to go discern this with God. I've said it. Have you done it? On that same night, the 14th, I will pass through Egypt and strike down every firstborn of both people and animals. I will bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. I am the Lord. The blood will be a sign for you on the houses where you are. And I will see, when I see the blood, I will pass over you. No destructive plague will touch you when I strike Egypt. All right, there's the Passover. Do you get that from Easter? Didn't think so. This is the day you are to commemorate for the generations to come. Generations to come. You are to commemorate it. You are to remember it. Oh, but that's already been fulfilled. Therefore, I don't know where people are getting their doctrines. Where in the world do you get that idea? In the Bible, when God says this is a day you are to commemorate, you are to remember this for the generations to come. You shall celebrate it as a festival to the Lord, a lasting ordinance, in remembrance of what he did. You know, because that's how you have a relationship with someone. For 7 days you are to eat bread made without yeast. On the first day, remove the yeast from your houses. For whoever eats anything with yeast in it from the first day through the 7th must be cut off from Israel. Okay, now it sounds like it's saying to, on the first day of the unleavened bread, you're removing the yeast from your houses. We remove it before the 14th day just to get all the yeast. It takes a minute to make sure that all those products are out of the house for us. We don't just have like one jar of yeast of like sourdough, although that's really the bulk of it. But any product that we have in the house that has yeast in it, we throw out. So we kind of start doing this like the week before we start eating, like, okay, well, let's eat all the tortillas, because the tortillas I make have yeast in them. They have sourdough starter in them. The bread that we've baked, and any kind of products that we have in the cupboard, which I think are pretty minimal. I don't think we have anything. But here it's saying, for 7 days you are to eat bread made without yeast. On the first day, remove the yeast from your houses. For whoever eats anything with yeast in it from the 1st through the 7th must be cut off from Israel. So make sure that the day after tomorrow, that by that time, all the yeast is out of your house. Is this a box to be checked? No, it's a command. It's a command that we're supposed to rend our hearts to, what it means to God. So we obey the command, not as a box to be checked, but we rend our hearts to, why does this matter to him? Well, I mean, we're supposed to be ridding ourselves of sin, right? Anyone who continues to sin deliberately, there's no sacrifice left for them. So, do you think this has something to do with that? On the first day, hold a sacred assembly, and another one on the 7th day. Do no regular work on these days, except to prepare food for everyone to eat. That is all you may do. Now, if you're in obedience, you're going to know this, but let me just direct your attention to the fact that on the first day, which would be the 15th, that's a usual Sabbath, but it's telling you also on the 7th day to observe a Sabbath. How many days are in between? There are 5 days in between the first day and that 7th day. So this is going to throw off your Sabbaths that you would normally be observing in a regular month. You're going to now have a Sabbath on the 21st instead of the 22nd, which means that the last Sabbath of the month is going to be on the 28th instead of the 29th. So you just need to know this for the month of Nisan, that your Sabbaths end up on different days from what you are accustomed to. In a regular month, you have the Sabbath, you have the first day of the month, which is a new moon, and it is a rest day. But then you have weekly Sabbaths, are the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th. Do no work at all on these days except to prepare food for everyone to eat. That is all you may do. Celebrate the festival of unleavened bread, because it was on this very day that I brought your divisions out of Egypt. Therefore, we know by 2 reasons. For 2 reasons, we know that the Israelites were not brought out on the 14th of the month. Number 1, God told them, do not go out of your doors. Okay? Because he was bringing the destroying angels. So they did not go out of their doors on the 14th day of the month. The other reason we know is because he's already telling us right here that the festival of unleavened bread on the 15th day of the month, that was the very day that he brought your divisions out of Egypt. Celebrate this day as a lasting ordinance for the generations to come. In the first month you are to eat bread made without yeast from the evening of the 14th day until the evening of the 21st day. For 7 days no yeast is to be found in your houses. Okay, and he says, so you're celebrating it from the 14th day until the evening of the 21st day. But then he says, for 7 days, no yeast is to be found in your houses. People who are observing, as we once did, and for a very long time we did, evening to evening days, which is actually not correct. That is a false teaching of the image of the Antichrist. They're going to look at this and that's going to be fodder for their narrative. They're going to say, but it says, it identifies that to be 7 days. Well, no, because we just identified in the last paragraph that from the first day of unleavened bread, no yeast is to be found in your houses. That's the day that you're clearing out the yeast. So it's not including the 14th as a day where there's no yeast in your house. So there was still yeast in their house when they left Egypt. And this is why God says they left without adding yeast to the bread. I'm telling you this because I previously didn't understand it because of all of the interferences of these false doctrines that have been thrown in. So what I had previously thought is like, it's kind of weird that God says you're leaving in haste and you're not adding yeast to your bread when he already told them to clear their houses of yeast. But he's telling them how they're going to observe this going forward because they actually left on the 15th, on the day that they would be clearing their houses of yeast. For 7 days no yeast is to be found in your houses, and anyone, whether foreigner or native born, who eats anything with yeast in it must be cut off from the community of Israel. Eat nothing with yeast. Wherever you live, you must eat unleavened bread. Then Moses summoned all the elders of Israel and said to them, go at once and select the animals for your families and slaughter the Passover lamb. Take a bunch of hyssop, dip it into the blood in the basin, and put some of the blood on the top and both sides of your doorframe. None of you shall go out of the door of your house until morning. Okay. Don't go out of the door of your house until morning. So they didn't leave on the 14th. It wasn't until morning that they left. When the Lord goes through the land to strike down the Egyptians, he will see the blood on the top and the sides of the doorframe and pass over that doorway, and he will not permit the destroyer to enter your house and strike you down. By the way, when would morning have been? Well, morning is defined as when the light comes. That's morning and day. And evening is defined as dark. Morning would have been when the light comes up. That's what we should be getting accustomed to. What we have been accustomed to is that 12 a.m. is technically morning, right? So we would say 1 and 2 and 3. We would say that that's already morning. God would not say that. And the only thing that matters is what God says. God would not say that because the light isn't up yet. Obey these instructions as a lasting ordinance for you and your descendants. When you enter the land that the Lord will give you as he promised, observe this ceremony. And when your children ask you, what does this ceremony mean to you? Then tell them, it is the Passover sacrifice to the Lord who passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt and spared our homes when he struck down the Egyptians. Then the people bowed down and worshipped. The Israelites did just what the Lord commanded Moses and Aaron. At midnight, the Lord struck down all the firstborn in Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sat on the throne, to the firstborn of the prisoner who was in the dungeon, and the firstborn of all the livestock as well. Pharaoh and all his officials and all the Egyptians got up during the night, and there was loud wailing in Egypt, for there was not a house without someone dead. During the night, Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, up, leave my people. You and the Israelites, go, worship the Lord as you have requested, take your flocks and herds as you have said, and go, and also bless me. The audacity of Pharaoh, right? Also bless me after all this time that he's like reneged. The Egyptians urged the people to hurry and leave the country, for otherwise, they said, we will all die. So the people took their dough before the yeast was added and carried it on their shoulders in kneading troughs wrapped in clothing. The Israelites did as Moses instructed and asked the Egyptians for articles of silver and gold and for clothing. The Lord had made the Egyptians favorably disposed toward the people, and they gave them what they asked for. So they plundered the Egyptians. The Israelites journeyed from Ramesses to Succoth. There were about 600,000 men on foot, besides women and children. Many other people went up with them, and also large droves of livestock, both flocks and herds. With the dough the Israelites had brought from Egypt, they baked loaves of unleavened bread. The dough was without yeast because they had been driven out of Egypt and did not have time to prepare food for themselves. Now, the length of time the Israelite people lived in Egypt was 430 years. Because remember that God said to Abraham, your descendants are going to be in captivity for 400 years. So this is the point I was making at the beginning of the video, that it's a roundabout, right? He said 400 years then, and now we see that they lived in Egypt for 430 years. At the end of the 430 years, to the very day, all the Lord's divisions left Egypt, because the Lord kept vigil that night to bring them out of Egypt. On this night, all the Israelites are to keep vigil to honor the Lord for the generations to come. Okay, so it said that they are not to go out of their doors until morning. Pharaoh has summoned Moses and Aaron to tell them to leave. Night is defined by darkness, so they're gathering everything during that day. They're plundering the Egyptians, and they're leaving at night. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, these are the regulations for the Passover meal. No foreigner may eat it. Any slave you have bought may eat it after you have circumcised him, but a temporary resident or a hired worker may not eat it. It must be eaten inside the house. Take none of the meat outside the house. Do not break any of the bones. The whole community of Israel must celebrate it. A foreigner residing among you who wants to celebrate the Lord's Passover must have all the males in his household circumcised. Then he may take part like one born in the land. Do you understand what he's saying? He's saying that a foreigner is able to be included in the Passover as one born in the land through the covenant of circumcision. So he's already, from the very beginning, telling you that the covenant of circumcision is what matters. Moreover, you see later on in the book of Esther that many of these people of other nationalities became Jews. So a Jew is not on the basis of race, nationality, or ethnicity. No uncircumcised male may eat it. The same law applies both to the native born and to the foreigner residing among you. All the Israelites did just what the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron. On that very day, the Lord brought the Israelites out of Egypt by their divisions. Okay, let me correct something that I said earlier. Now, I'm going back to verse 42 because it says, because the Lord kept vigil that night to bring them out of Egypt, on this night, all the Israelites are to keep vigil to honor the Lord for the generations to come. I was reading it as he kept vigil that night and brought them out of Egypt that night, which is not accurate because later on here it says that he brought them out during the day. So it sounds like they came out during the day, that they gathered all their things, they plundered the Egyptians, gathered their children and their livestock and their clothes, etc., and then they left. So they left during the day. They did not leave during the night. What it's saying in verse 42 is that because the Lord kept vigil that night to bring them out of Egypt, we are to keep vigil to honor the Lord for generations to come. So that's what we're doing on the 14th. It doesn't say that he kept vigil to bring them out of Egypt. It doesn't say that he brought them out of Egypt that night because he told them not to go out of their doors. We already know that. Okay, so that's the first Passover. In Leviticus 23, verse 4, he says, these are the Lord's appointed festivals, the sacred assemblies you are to proclaim at their appointed times. The Lord's Passover begins at twilight on the 14th day of the first month. On the 15th day of that month, the Lord's festival of unleavened bread begins. For 7 days you must eat bread made without yeast. On the first day, hold a sacred assembly and do no regular work. For 7 days, present a food offering to the Lord, and on the 7th day, hold a sacred assembly and do no regular work. Now, the sacrifice has already been completed. What we are continuing to observe is eating unleavened bread for the 7 days of the unleavened bread festival and also the first day of Passover. Now, it's interesting that they still had the ability on the 14th day of the month to eat unleavened bread, but he told them to prepare unleavened bread. He didn't allow them to add yeast at that time, even though yeast was still in their house, did he? So there's something about that that's really important. He's making a point, even in calling an entire festival the Festival of Unleavened Bread. So now I'm going to refer to a question that was asked of me earlier regarding the Festival of Unleavened Bread and regarding the Passover. This person says, I will be celebrating Passover tomorrow and the 7 days of unleavened bread following. I'm unclear about that. Are we only to eat unleavened bread, or is unleavened bread the only type of bread we are to eat with meals for 7 days? So, do you understand the question? Let me just clarify. As I understand the question, she's asking, are we supposed to be intentional about eating unleavened bread each day, or are we supposed to just avoid eating leavening if we make a sandwich, or should we happen to eat bread with our meals? The command is that we are to eat unleavened bread each of those days, each of those 8 days. So we are partaking of the bread. And I want to tell you that if it's like, oh, we'll just avoid leavened bread, like if that was the command, we wouldn't be leaning into it. If we are intentionally eating unleavened bread every day, we're going to rend our hearts to what has been said about bread. Paul said that we are each partaking of that same loaf. Jesus said he is the bread of life. If we were sacrificing, we would understand what it is to sacrifice an animal for our cleansing and then partake of that animal, and that in partaking of that animal that we are being cleansed. We would understand that. That's what we should be understanding, regardless of whether we've been participating in animal sacrifice. But the problem in not understanding it is that we have this narrative that that's just for the Jews, that it doesn't apply to us, and that that's already been fulfilled. So we disregard it. We disregard the very things that God used to make a name for himself, that he said, you are to call me from generation to generation, that he said you are to remember from generation to generation as a lasting ordinance wherever you live, and teach your kids about this. That's why we don't get it. But we are eating, so rend your heart to it. We're eating of the same loaf, of the same sacrifice. Jesus is the bread of life. Your ancestors ate manna from heaven while they were in the wilderness and they died. But Jesus is the bread of life. Anyone who eats of him will not die. They will have eternal life. And then on the Passover, in which he gave his life as the sacrificial lamb, he said, this is the bread. So they were eating the Passover, and he said, eat this bread in remembrance of me, in remembrance of my body, the sacrifice that you are partaking of. Drink this wine in remembrance of the blood that's being poured out for you, the blood that sanctifies you, the blood that was used in sacrifice to cleanse you. Do you remember that you're to sprinkle the blood on the horns of the altar, that the Israelites were sprinkled with blood in order for that to cleanse them? Well, then we should understand, right? And not only should we understand, but every time we sit down to eat, we should be discerning this. And Paul said, this is why many of you are sick, because you're not discerning it. You are not eating the Lord's Supper, you're eating your own. You are concerned about indulging your flesh, about getting drunk, and then you exclude people who don't have the money to participate in this. You are abusing the Lord's Supper. Paul also said to do away with the old bread that was leavened with malice and wickedness, that we must become a new unleavened batch as we really are. And John says that anyone who continues to deliberately go on sinning, no sacrifice is left for them. And the word says we're being purified, made spotless, and refined. And the word says that we are to become holy as God is holy. All of this should be understood. As we're doing this, we should understand that we are becoming that bread of affliction that withholds from itself, he who withheld from himself, in order to be sinless and to be that sacrificial lamb. We must become that. We must stop sinning. We must withhold from ourselves and the sinful flesh. We must become disciplined in our physical flesh, because our physical flesh is weak, but our spirit is willing. Where do we need to live? In the spirit God gave us, by his spirit, in the heart, where he's cleaning us up, where we're going to be justified, where he's purifying, making spotless, and refining us, where we are becoming holy as the Lord is holy. If you're not doing this, you can't enter into that Passover. And how much time do you have? I've warned you that this is a critical Passover. I have warned you that you must return to him, that you must be clean, that you must be cleansed as the Israelites were doing to enter into the Passover with the ashes of a red heifer. You cannot be around dead bodies, guys. You cannot join yourselves with those of the world who are spiritually dead, and you cannot be a dead body. And it's not going to be enough for you to just verbalize that and say, I believe that Christ, blah, blah, blah. I mean, like, really hard for the righteous to be saved, but it's that easy for you, right? You have to cleanse yourself. You have to set yourself apart to God and do away with the things that your flesh wants to do here. Then you can enter this community and you can partake in the Passover when you have circumcised yourself, when you have done away with the deeds of the flesh. But see, so many of you go around verbalizing your Christianity as though that's what it is and checking boxes, but you're not bearing the fruit of having actually done this in your heart. And I want to tell you, I will talk about this more in another video that I'm going to do, that this is a time of exposure. You're going to be exposed. What is in your heart is going to be laid bare. That's what's going to happen this Passover. We're going to know whether you have the seal or not. And there is one person on this channel that I want to say, you are bearing some fruit, but I confronted you about fruit that you are not bearing with regard to repentance. and the danger that you put me and my family and your own children in. And if you don't go deal with that, you are not going to enter this first Passover. It doesn't matter how many comments you put on this channel. It doesn't matter how many videos you listen to. It does not matter. If you do not bear the fruit of repentance, it doesn't matter how many boxes you're checking. You need to go deal with that. And the reason I'm calling you out is because you're not. And because even though you put my family in danger, I care enough about you, and my family cares enough about you to tell you you will not enter this Passover if you are unwilling to examine yourself and why you made the decisions that you made. You don't get to just skate over the things you don't want to deal with. To the rest of you, as you are eating this bread, this is what you are to do. This is what you are to remember and rend your heart to and, pursue God and what his heart is. Don't make the mistake of treating him like boxes to be checked. Discern where you're at with him. Ask him to lay bare your heart. But this is what is going to happen. This is a time of exposure right now. All right, I think I've given you a lot of information with regard to Passover, why it matters, why this is a critical Passover, why this is going to be a time of exposure. I mean, we're going to see who God brings this plague on, and we're going to know whether you have the seal of God or not. Because it's not going to be enough for you to just keep going around calling yourself Christian and saying, well, this is what the situation is. We're going to know. There are also other things that God is laying bare right now. The Epstein files, for one, and what has been behind much of what has gone on in Europe, in the United States, these key players, along with other countries. More is going to be revealed. There's something to kind of be said for the fact that, these rich elites go and visit the Pope, isn't there? Something to be said for the similarities between what we've seen the image of the Antichrist doing through Epstein and Mossad, also along with the false prophet of the United States, also along with the 10 horns that became the 10 kings that became Western Europe. There's something to be said for that, isn't there? How coincidental it seems that they have been engaging in the same behaviors, the same infant sacrifice, the same pedophilia, the same mass graves. And don't tell me that this is conspiracy. This was on the DOJ website. Kind of weird that Elon Musk and the American presidents and Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein went to visit the Pope. What do they have to do with the Pope? Kind of weird, huh? I wonder what more exposure is to come, guys. Go discern the message with God.